Joe and Law were an old Jewish couple. They were my grand aunt and uncle. I only met them once at a dinner. And during the course of the dinner, this couple who had clearly probably been married for a good 40 or more years sat next to each other and clearly knew when one wanted the salt and reached over across the other one, and were very responsive to each other's gestures, just seeming to function as one person. So much so that at one point during dessert, La says, "Oh, I have such a headache." And she pulls her purse up and puts it on the table and starts rummaging through and finds a bottle of aspirin and takes 2. And Joe, just sitting there staring forward without expression, is sitting next to her. And La turns to Joe and says, "Joe, such a headache I have. Take these." And so she takes out 2 more aspirin, and Joe just grabs them and throws them in his mouth and downs them with a glass of water. And I guess Law somehow thought that in doing this, by taking 4 aspirin between the 2 of them, maybe her headache would go away quicker. I don't know. But it was weird. I'm in the middle of doing some premarital counseling. And as always, the first session involves me at some point saying, "So, why her? Why him?" And then I really could, don't tell anybody, go take a walk and come back 20 minutes later. Because the answers are always the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's our experience. When we try to explain why we love each other, it's like, he's so kind. She's the funniest person I've ever met. He's so understanding. I just love his smile. It's the exact same thing I have heard for 20 years. And then the next session, after we've done all that, is when we actually drill down into the realities. And what I am looking for is this couple's love for each other strange enough to be true? Because any kind of Hallmark type love I have ever personally witnessed or watched on TV has struck me as absolutely false, bearing almost no resemblance, as a matter of fact, to genuine love, where they hold hands and walk down the beach, all those vacation commercials, where the couple is perfect and beautiful and happy and splashing each other and just so delighted at all times to be with each other and up for fun. I've never seen an actual relationship function like that for more than a day. And that's not only romantic relationships. I think any kind of love, when it comes right down to it, has a base weirdness. My grandfather, when I was a child, used to tell me at breakfast almost every morning when I'd come to visit in the trailer park over his coffee, and he'd make me coffee milk, so I'm 5, so I'm sitting there drinking coffee with Granddad. He didn't share his cigarette, but he was always blowing smoke in my face. And at some point, he would lay down the law of the day, and this was the law. I'm the king of this castle. Grandma is the queen of this castle. And you are the dirty little rascal. And I'd just suck that all in. And this happened every summer. I'd hear this same speech. And over a while, I don't even know what a rascal is, but because they're a king and queen, and I get that, in my mind, the dirty little rascal is kind of this sea creature that lives in the moat under a bridge. And I have this in my head, and one evening, when they send me off to bed, I'm about 5 or 6, I start crying and crying and crying. So my grandfather comes in to find out what's wrong. Doesn't sit down and say, "Sweetheart, what's happening?" No. Still chain smoking. Flicks on the light, looks at me, says, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I'm sobbing, and I say, "I don't want to be the dirty little rascal. I want to be the princess. The princess." So Granddad listens to this, and he thinks about it, takes a few drags of a cigarette, mulls it over, and finally says, "All right, you can be the princess of the castle tomorrow only." I was thrilled. Nothing changed. This day was going to play out like it was going to play out, with the kiddie pool in the backyard and making cantaloupe seed necklaces with Grandma, maybe going out for ice cream later. It was the same exact day, but I was completely beside myself with joy and accepted that it was for one day only and never asked again. Meanwhile, for the next 25, 30 years until this old cranky man died, I would get a birthday card. And every year, it was a birthday card of a different Disney princess. Belle, Cinderella, Snow White. And my grandfather, who'd finished his formal education in 3rd grade someplace in the slums of Brooklyn, when a principal called him in and said, "You don't want to go to school anymore, do ya?" And Granddad said, "No." His handwriting was that of a like an 8-year-old boy, misspelled like an 8-year-old boy. And on this card from my grandfather, it would say, "To the dirty little rascal, from the king of the castle, you can be the princess of the castle today only." And a $20 bill would slide out. You know I have every single one of those 38 cards, right? He was weird. I loved it. Love doesn't get any more normal or less odd when it comes to church. Church love is perhaps some of the weirdest love I have ever known. A church family is a strange thing. One of my favorite weird church loves was when I actually was getting to know Sister Norberta, who became one of Rosemary's and my best friends, running the shelter in the bottom of St. John's Lutheran Church. And everybody was intimidated by her. She was a great big German nun, and she was scary. And she had to be, because she had to take care of like hundreds of people who were often out of control for one reason or another. So anyway, I come in looking for Norberta, who's always laying down the law, telling people when they're supposed to be there, kicking them out. But she's nowhere to be found, and so I ask the assistant at the desk, "Where's Norberta?" And Rodney goes, "Oh, man. Norberta had to go down looking on 440 for a pair of pink underpants." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, she couldn't find any over at the Walmart. So she's like going to go to Lowe's because we really need a 6-pack of pink underpants." I'm like, "Why?" And Rodney goes, "Because Helen won't wear anything except pink underpants." There is a 90-year-old homeless woman sitting there drinking her coffee. And she's the one who has made Norberta spend 3 hours going up and down 440 looking for pink. That's weird. And that is also absolutely symbolic of actual love. And it's the kind of love that church has happening all the time. This church, I knew that was my I Love Norberta story. My I love this church story was, some of you have heard this too many times, but too bad, I'm a storyteller, and I tell family stories. I'm sitting in my office, it's cleaning day, and the other old couple, kind of like Joe and La, but for this church, of course, is Bela and Donald, are downstairs in the basement yelling at each other because they're trying to clean up. And they are accusing each other in the basement of, this is actually all of your mess. No, it's your mess. They've been here for 30 years. And Donald's like, that's all Cathedral Arts junk. And Bill was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's all of your art supplies. And they're going at it. And I'm really entertained the more angry they get. And then finally, you hear Bella in the basement, and she goes, what are we doing with 2 parachutes? And Donald says, oh yeah, those are mine. And Bela says, what do you need 2 silk parachutes for? Donald says, what don't I need 2 silk parachutes for? And I was like, oh man, this is home. I am so happy. When Jesus is at dinner with his friends Lazarus and Mary and Martha, everybody at the dinner table understands that this is going to be one of Jesus' last dinners anywhere. Because there is no doubt at this point that after healing all of these people and really annoying the church, and then raising, by the way, a little earlier, Lazarus, who's at the dinner table, from the dead, there is no Jewish guy in all of Israel who is more of a national security threat to the Roman Empire than Jesus. And even the church at this point knows it's either going to be him or it's going to be us. They're going to have to take him out or they're going to come after all of us, so we have to give him up. And everyone knows it, including Jesus. So when Jesus is here with his friends, I get the sense that this is a respite before having to face Holy Week, what's about to come. And you all know, even though it doesn't say it, that Martha has been in the kitchen probably for 3 or 4 days cooking. She made that cheesecake that takes all day long that you have to let sit and make sure that it doesn't crack. She made that. She made the green beans with the crunchy onions on top that he loves. She's thought of all these things. She probably has like fried chicken and macaroni and like squash. She's just thought of everything that this guy loves, and she's been cooking forever. Because she doesn't know what else to do, and no one knows what to say. And Mary doesn't know what to say either. So she, in the middle of dinner, disappears from the table. And she comes back with this perfume. And she kneels down at her feet, at his feet. And she pours out the whole thing and rubs it on his feet with her hair. And this is the weirdest thing that anyone has ever seen. And the smell of that weird act, that love, that scent, that smells like love, just fills the entire room. And when Judas makes the observation that that was a really expensive bottle of perfume, and it could have easily been sold to feed the poor and be put to much more productive use, he's right that Mary's love has absolutely no redeeming social value at all. And the money she spent on that perfume could have been put to some joyless, loveless good. And when Jesus makes this observation, he doesn't have any love for Mary, and he certainly doesn't have any love for Jesus, and he's completely strayed from the heart of God. I don't know what all of this means. I do know when you take aspirin because your wife has a headache, and when you spend 3 hours going up and down 440 looking for pink underpants, and when you leave those parachutes in the basement alone even though they're taking up space. You don't do it because it's a productive use of time. You do it because you love. And you want to inspire joy in the person that you love by knowing deeply and cherishing their particular oddness. And when you allow yourself to become that strange for each other, the fragrance of Christ's love for you and for this broken world wafts everywhere. So, brothers and sisters, I think the only way to be church to each other is to make room for each other's frailties and strangeness and dote upon each other's peculiarities and cherish each other's weirdness with all our hearts. When Jesus says, love one another because love is of God, especially with the crew of people he hangs out with, he can't mean anything else. Amen.